1, go. Careful. What are you doing? Are you okay?
Okay, I'm acutely aware that this has been done to death, but in this episode of Power Drifting, we are not looking at dirt, we are looking at gravel. Sigh, eye roll, etc. Mike, let's do this.
Let's do it.
We wanted to give you a spectacle worthy of the name, and we've done it.
Yes, hello and welcome to Power Drifting, the rally game podcast. It's our first episode of 2021. Happy New Year, Mike. How you doing?
Happy New Year. Not too bad. The year's started brilliantly, as I'm sure everyone agrees. So yeah, good start.
Yeah, it's been a great start to the year, hasn't it? I love sitting I love sitting inside my house, staring at the four walls. Of course, Merry Christmas, belatedly, and to you, our dear listeners, as well. Hope you're having a lovely start to 2021, wherever you may be on this accursed earth that we call home. Lockdown, mate, it's back for the threequel. How are you planning on getting through this one, other than just playing more rally games?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think this is the greatest opportunity. A lockdown gives humanity a chance to put their mettle against the laws of Mother Nature in a high-powered racing vehicle virtually.
Exactly. Yeah, I went back and listened to a few of our previous episodes just because I was bored, and one of them that jumped out at me was your Dakar 18 bonus stage, which then prompted me to have a look at how much it was on the PlayStation Store, and lo and behold, $4.99. So I jumped in,
indeed, yeah,
bought it, and I'm pleasantly surprised at how different it is to how I expected. Obviously, I listened to your podcast on it, but I wasn't expecting it to be. I wasn't expecting to be able to get out of the vehicle and walk around.
No,
like it's some kind of weird GTA clone, you know.
Yeah, it's again, I think I've said it on the podcast myself, but it's for $4.99. It's a game which you have to experience. It does a lot of things wrong, but it does so many things weird that it's really worth it. And especially if you ramp the difficulty up, don't go into it playing difficulty at lowest level, because you miss half the game.
Really?
There was some very strange. You've got a very long and quite weird experience ahead of you, Tom.
Okay, I'll look forward to it then. Okay, but that's I was going to say that's a topic for another episode, but it's an episode you've already done, so maybe it isn't. Today, though, in this episode, we're talking about Gravel, the 2018 release from Milestone. Milestone are a developer who are well versed in the art of rally. Not art of rally, that's a different thing entirely. The art of rally. They are an Italian developer who are now well accustomed and well known for their two-wheeled racing games, Mike. Things like the Ride series, MotoGP, and the motocross games.
Yep.
What's your general kind of feeling towards Milestone's racing games?
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of them. I do like the MXGP games and the Supercross games. I know they're not particularly amazing in terms of physics and stuff, but I enjoy them quite a lot. So I do like Milestone racing games. Yeah, I sort of view them as a little bit of a budget label, maybe a little bit unfairly, but they're a little bit of they have a little bit of an independent streak to them. So their games are relatively not basic, but they're quite.
They're like AA instead of AAA, aren't they?
Yeah, good. That's a good summary, actually. Yeah, they're clearly not AAA, but I think there's space for that in the world of gaming, and I think the games have a lot of content, which I think sometimes is better than spectacle. To have a lot of content to get your teeth stuck into.
Yeah, totally. And Milestone, obviously, relevant to this particular episode because they developed and published the game that we're talking about, but also previously they were the developer who was given the WRC license to create the WRC games. And also they had their own independent kind of IP with Sebastian Loeb Evo back in 2016, which I wasn't a fan of for various reasons that I could wax lyrical about for much longer than anybody really deserves to hear me wax lyrical on anything. But going way back into the mists of time, Milestone were the developers who created such venerable titles as Screamer, Screamer 2 and Screamer Rally back in the old MS-DOS and early Windows.
Classics.
Yeah, Gravel was their, I believe it was their last four-wheeled foray into racing games. It's less of a rally game, more of an off-road kind of arcade game, but it does feature rally quite heavily, so that's why we've deemed it appropriate to include it here on Power Drifting. But yeah, as I said, released on the PS4, Xbox One and Steam back in February 2018. And just going back to it in the last couple of weeks and playing over it just in preparation for this episode, I do recognise it has a lot of similarities with something like Dirt 5. That's something that has not only appeared to me, but also to yourself, Mike, as well. Did you say that it kind of reminded you a little bit of the way that Dirt 2 progresses you through the game?
Yeah, I think in some ways, I think Dirt 2 had that level of showcase spectacle. And I think Gravel does that a little bit. I think it takes away maybe some of the sporting elements, some of the more sort of World Tour sporting, quite strict, quite stiff that sometimes racing games can have, and it takes it more in the direction of spectacle and showcase, which is an absolutely perfectly acceptable direction to take it.
Yeah, I agree. So Gravel, then, it has several main game modes. You've got the Off-Road Masters, which is basically the main career mode, which we'll go into in a little bit more depth in a minute. It's got a free race mode, as you would imagine. There's a multiplayer, a time attack, and weekly challenges, which is interesting because it's a game that came out in early 2018, and the weekly challenges are still updated now. Mm-hmm. And basically what these are is, as the name suggests, it's a weekly kind of online leaderboard thing where you get a certain track that you are presented with. You have to do it in a certain amount of time, and then you are matched against people from around the world. Still quite a few people online playing these weekly challenges. Not so much the actual multiplayer, though, because I did try and play some multiplayer races last night, and there's nobody online to play against. I do remember playing it back when it was new online with quite a lot of people in the different lobbies, and it was quite good fun. Yeah. So I can say with some experience that it was a good game online, and possibly still is if there's people playing. So yeah, bear that in mind if you go and buy this game now in 2021. So yeah, the game is split into several different types of play mode, as you would imagine, and these play modes are, they take place in quite a wide variety of environments. There are 18 different environments in the game, some of which have as many as 10 different courses within them, but some of them just have a single track. And these are I'll just go through the list of the different environments, Mike. So we've got Alaska, Namibia. I don't think I've ever seen Namibia in another game before, unless it's in Dakar.
No, I don't think it is. No, I don't think so.
Iceland, Blue Paradise Pacific Ocean, which is like a tropical course, the Iron Mine in the Outback, Frozen Peak, the Dam, just the Dam in Arizona. Then you've got some kind of self-enclosed courses such as the Memorial Coliseum, Los Angeles, and the Florida Stadium. Then we've got rallycross courses in. I'm going to butcher some of these. Some of the pronunciation here, Mike, I apologise. And to our listeners. Loheak, I think it's pronounced. We've got Autodromo di Franciacorta. We've got Riga, and I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the track in that location. Las Vegas, Hell, Grand Prix Three Rivers, or Trois Rivers. That's my French pronunciation there.
Yeah.
Rally San Luis, Circuit International de Montalegre, and one that, again, which I can't pronounce, I'm just going to call it Eastering or Estering. So you've got quite a variety there of tracks, and they basically span all the different types of environment that is the norm for this type of games. You've got desert, you've got snowy, you've got jungle, tropical, beaches, forests, canyons, as I say, self-contained stadiums, rallycross tracks, both tarmac and dirt surfaces. So good variety there. And that's what we like to see in a rally game.
Yeah, I think it touches on generic a little bit at times. The sort of some of the tracks, the Dam, lovely generic title there. But I think it's generally quite a good diverse mix. I think Namibia probably the first time I've seen Namibia on a racing game. I can't think of any other game with Namibia in it.
Yeah.
Is it mostly? It's the official WRC. It's the official rallycross championship course as well, isn't it? If I remember rightly.
I believe that the rallycross courses are real world courses, yeah, but obviously the ones set in like Alaska and Iceland and Namibia are just kind of fanciful kind of races through tunnels that go through mountains, that kind of thing, which are for the most part quite good fun and quite inventive in some ways.
Yeah,
a lot of open spaces that you race through, but in some ways it can become a bit of a almost like a free for all where you are not entirely sure where it is you're meant to be going, just because some of these open areas are a bit kind of ambiguous in where they want you to go next. We'll come to that in a minute, but basically some of the areas and some of the courses, for people who don't live in the UK and potentially don't drive and have never driven this road, haven't got a clue what I'm talking about. But if you've ever driven on the M6 toll in England, when you go through the toll plaza and put your money in the little thing to like open up the barrier, as you leave the toll plaza, it's kind of like this big, wide kind of, like I say, like a toll plaza, but then it kind of narrows back down to like the 3-lane motorway. But as you leave that toll plaza, it's like wacky races. Everybody's trying to like speed off as fast as they can to get onto the motorway again. And that's what the open plains in gravel kind of remind me of, because you've got these massive wide tracks, but you're not really sure where you're meant to be going. So all these cars are kind of zipping in front of you all over the place, and it's quite fun. Well, it's quite fun in real life and in gravel. So yeah, if you've never driven on the M6 toll, get yourself down there for a bit of wacky races. Just not during lockdown, and not if it's not an essential journey.
After lockdown. Yeah.
Okay, so as well as lots of environments and tracks, there's lots of vehicles as well. I didn't actually count how many there are because I've not unlocked them all yet, but they are spread across quite a wide variety of categories. So you've got speed cross, which is basically just another name for rallycross. You've got trophy trucks. You've got extreme racing categories A to D, and basically they're rally cars from across the whole different sort of spectrum, from historic cars to Group B to modern day to sort of 1990s rally cars. It's a really nice selection. It's really cool. Everything's officially licensed, so anything you can think of, it's going to be there if it's it's got a high enough profile in the real world of rally. As well as that, you've got cross country, you've got buggies, and quite weirdly, you've got special forces, which is basically just military vehicles. So you've got Humvees and armoured cars, which I think is an odd choice, especially since some of them have like gun emplacements, but you can't use them. Bit odd. You know that car in I think it's in Die Hard, the armoured car that they try to ram the Nakatomi Tower's front doors with, and they fire the rocket at it. Hit it again! That was my impression of one of the Die Hard terrorists.
Maybe they were trying to go for a Vigilante 8 style spin-off of gravel. They were just testing the waters with military vehicles.
Possibly.
Imagine that, a Destruction Derby rally game. That would be that's an episode I want to do.
It exists, mate, doesn't it? Wreckfest.
Oh yeah.
That's a good game. Well worth a play if you've not played it yet.
Yeah, no, it is, yeah.
So familiar vehicles from across the spectrum. As I say, you've got things like Lancia Deltas, Toyota Celica, Subaru Imprezas, Mitsubishi Lancers, and historic rally vehicles. So if you're a fan of those kinds of vehicles, as I'm sure you are, if you're listening to this podcast and like this game, then jump in.
Yeah.
We wanted to give you a spectacle worthy of the name, and we've done it. We've organised a race which will leave you breathless here in the Alaskan mountains. To the off-road fans watching out there, you're on Gravel Channel. Stay tuned, you won't regret it.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the specific game modes and the some of the pros and cons, really, of this game. The main part of the game is the Off-Road Masters mode, which is set up like a sort of a TV series on a fake channel called Gravel Channel. It's similar in some ways to something like Split Second. Do you remember that, Mike? Split Second Velocity?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's fantastic.
I was about to say that, yeah. So very similar to sort of... I love Split Second. Great game. And the way it sort of presents it in terms of... Almost like it was like a Running Man's type thing, isn't it? Where you sort of have everything as a fake TV program. Obviously, completely ridiculous fake TV program, because you're not going to be able to survive some of the crashes that you do in these games. But
each episode is like split into several race types with like an announcer who introduces each episode like it's like a fight to the death. Welcome to Gravel Channel. This is going to be spectacular. And it's just like, this is weird, but okay. You do you, Gravel. You do you.
Yeah, I think we said about earlier on about the spectacle of the game. I think sometimes in gravel it doesn't quite hit the mark, and it feels a little bit like I don't know if you ever played any. I'm a big fan of really obscure games. You might have gathered that. I love winter sports games. Yeah. Whenever you play a winter sports game or any sort of quite cheap sports game, the commentary is always awful. and you have these sort of like actors who have no idea what they're talking about, sort of introducing people like, oh, this skier from Austria, he's a handsome chap. There's like really weird stuff, and that is actually a line from a skiing game, by the way. That's not something I made up.
Which skiing game is it? Is it? Let me guess. Is it Winter Heat?
No. It's It's Ski Racing 2006, I think it was.
It will surprise you to hear that I've not played that game, so I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of very similar to rally games to me, skiing games. But anyway, I digress. But yeah, gravel has a lot of that. I think there's a lot of sort of I can see the ambition of what they're doing. I can see what they're trying to do, but there's a little bit where it's they haven't quite got the budget to match their expectations.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, totally. Just going back to the sort of the script, if you will. Each race it presents you with a set of challenges in order to win stars, and you need to accumulate enough stars in each episode to reach the sort of the series finale, which is like a face-off against the master of that episode or that season or whatever you want to call it, in a one-on-one duel, which takes place across like maybe 3 or 4 different races, just one-on-one races. And we'll come back to those in a minute because I have a particular dislike of those one-on-one challenges for one particular reason. However, let's talk first about the different types of race that you can enjoy or experience. I think enjoy is a bit strong in some cases during the actual main episodes in the season. Race types include straight races against AI vehicles, which, let's be honest, are quite fun. You know, there's like 8 or 10 different vehicles you're racing against, and you can get bunched up quite easily, and they're quite scrappy. Do you know what I mean? You're trying to get through the pack, and you know it's one of them games where if you do have a crash and you do get left at the back of the pack, it can be quite difficult to actually catch back up again and get competitive again. So for that reason, it's not the best. But if you do manage to stay on track and stay with the pack, it's very sort of edge of the seat stuff. There are point to point or lap based races. There's time attack challenges. There's a break the gates style event where you're driving along and these kind of barrier things pop up in the middle of the track, and some of them have got X's on them and some of them have got arrows on them, and if you hit the ones with the arrows on, you just kind of smash straight through them with no effort. But if you hit the ones with X's on, they kind of slow you down, and it can be a bit of a pain because sometimes the way the track undulates, the camera kind of ducks down behind the back of the vehicle and you can't see what's coming up. Obviously, that you can mitigate that by playing it in first person or bonnet cam. But in this game specifically, I think playing from an external viewpoint is the way to go, just because of the way that the cars slide around so much. And not being able to see where these gates are popping up on the track it's a bit annoying, to be honest. A bit annoying. Otherwise, there's little like mini championships where the final standings count towards your points. And you need to earn points during the races by doing things like power slides, like landing jumps well. It's not really on the same sort of level as something like Project Gotham or Metropolis Street Racer getting kudos, but every time you do a cool thing like a nice long power slide around a corner, or do an overtake or land well or something like that, you get points, and these all go towards your driver level, which then in turn allows you to access better cars in the garage or access higher tiers in the main career mode. It sounds a bit complicated, but in practice it's pretty straightforward, to be honest. Yeah, so it's an interesting setup for a career mode. As we explained, it has been done before, slightly better in things like split second velocity, but it's refreshing to see something like this in a off-road sort of arcade rally game, really.
Sure.
Okay, Mike, most rally games, all rally games even, they live and die by the gameplay. And gravel is, for me, a bit of a mixed bag. I think the vehicle handling is generally fine, but I find it a little bit inconsistent. What I mean by that is it can feel very loose, but also very twitchy at the same time, which obviously is a complete oxymoron. But I'll try and explain what I mean.
I know what you mean, yeah.
Basically, the cars do not like to go around corners unless you slow right down to almost to a halt. But at high speeds, they just become super twitchy, and trying to keep it on the straight and narrow and not hit trackside objects, some of which will let you go straight through them, some of which will stop you dead, and it's a bit of a lottery as to which will do what to your car. It just comes off as I say, inconsistent. Yeah. Furthermore, some of the rear-wheel drive vehicles, some of the buggies especially, are just an absolute nightmare to control because they just want to spin around constantly. It doesn't matter how much you feather that throttle, how lightly you hold that trigger in. It just spins round on the spot. And if you have a crash and all the cars fly off away from you, you've got no chance of catching them back up.
No.
Which is a bit of a problem. Four-wheel drive vehicles are much better, I think. And generally, I stick to the rally cars if I can because most of the time they're actually quite nice to control. It's the more kind of exotic, inverted commas, vehicles like the buggies, like the sand dune buggies and the big kind of off-road trophy trucks that are just a bit of a handful to control, I find.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's for me the thing which stands out. I haven't played a game for quite a while. We're going to come out here now and say I haven't played this game in the last few weeks. But one of the things I remember is the super brakes. Whether it's been patched, I don't know. Maybe they fixed it. But I remember the fact that you could. Milestone have this thing where when they did their WRC games, they had the same thing as well, where it felt like you could brake really quickly, and it just felt unnatural to me. And I've been looking at some gameplay videos over the last couple of days to remind myself about the game, and I can see it again on there. Maybe it's something we should have patched, like I said, since.
Well, I played it myself. Like today, I played it, and I know exactly what you're talking about. You just touch them brakes, and it's like slamming on, throwing the anchors out.
Yeah, I think that Milestone do it a few times, haven't they? They did WRC games as well, if I remember rightly. I remember distinctly going around the Spanish tracks in one of their WRC games, and it was a track with loads of corners on one of the tarmac roads, and just it just felt like you were starting and stopping. Now I know obviously there was a little bit of that within Rally anyway, but it always feels a little bit unnatural. I think in this game it becomes quite obvious. But I agree as well that the rear wheel drive is just impossible to drive. I mean, it is incredibly twitchy, and I think what the game's tried to do, what Milestone seem to have tried to do, is trying to make every car distinct. And by doing that, I think they've gone too far, and they've made cars too much of a challenge to drive.
Yeah.
I think Dirt did this well several times over Dirt 1, Dirt 2, Dirt 3, where every car was different, but every car was still controllable. And I think when developers want to try and make distinction between cars, they can make it too difficult to drive. Maybe these cars are that difficult to drive in real life, but it just seems a little bit unnatural to me. It doesn't really feel as it should do, which is a bit of a shame. But when you actually get a car which drives well, and that is the majority of the cars in the game, it plays as well as any of the games which it's influenced by, which I think is a fantastic thing. It's to imitate the games it's trying to do and do it well is not an easy thing. So when it does it well, it's fantastic. When it tries something different, it sort of falls flat.
Yeah, and just to kind of compound that, if you try to play any of the sort of the icy stages in a rear wheel drive vehicle, good luck. Because you are not winning that race with a rear-wheel drive vehicle, because the car will just want to spin around constantly and you won't see the rest of the pack for dust. As I said to you last night, Mike, when I was having my freak out because of this game, I literally wanted to punch my screen because of this exact thing that we're talking about. Also, interestingly and weirdly, it's a bit of a lottery with the vehicles because you can't see any stats about how well they perform on the vehicle selection screen. Basically, what you need to do is you need to look at how big the engine is, how big the displacement is of the CCs, what the drivetrain is, and then kind of judge it that way. And it's just like, they even tell you whether it uses gasoline or diesel, which I thought was a bit of an odd thing to put on there, especially since it doesn't really have much of a difference, But there's no kind of stat bar telling you, how well this car controls, how well, what's the acceleration like. You just kind of have to rely on your own acquired knowledge of vehicles. Well, this one's light and it's got a big engine, so potentially it's going to be quick off the mark. I don't know, but it is a little bit like, I'll just use this one because it looks good, but it's not rear-wheel drive, so it might handle well. So it is a bit of a lottery. But I think overall, as you say, Mike, most of the vehicles do handle well, but the rear-wheel drive ones just steer clear because they're not good.
Yep.
Okay, then let's move on to one thing that I'm not a fan of in the slightest in this game, and that is the very apparent rubber banding. Now, it takes a lot to ruin a game with one aspect, but this is borderline game ruining for me. The rubber banding in gravel is some of the most blatant I've ever seen. You can be way out in front of the pack which doesn't happen very often, but once you do, it only takes the slightest cock-up for you to be in last place again, because the adversary vehicles have superhuman skills to catch up with you. And this is the most apparent for me in the boss, if you want to call them that, the boss challenges, the master racers who you have to beat at the end of each stage in the career mode. I'm at a loss for words at how infuriating those boss races are. You are not allowed to make a single mistake in any of those races, otherwise the boss will just fly past you. You can put 5-10 seconds ahead between you and them if you're good enough, but by the time you get to the finish line, they will literally be on your rear bumper. Yep. It's just so unfair. It's to the point that it's cheating. The game is literally cheating you out of being able to win those boss battles. And I've gotten a fair way through the game, but I'm at a stage now where I cannot beat the master challenge that I'm at, because it cheats so much. I mean, it's almost four-wheel thunder levels of you need to do everything so perfectly. What's that film with the lad who's got he's like a supercomputer? Is it Daryl? The film from the 80s where he's playing that game and he's like beating the computer at the really crap Formula 1 game. I think it's pole position or something. You need to be at that level of skill to beat some of the master challenges in the later stages, and it's not fun in any way. And so for that reason, it actually detracts from the rest of the game, how fun it can be.
Yeah, I think I remember actually messaging you when I first had the game, saying to you how good the game was for several days, and then actually I think I said to you at one point, the game's now annoyed me because of the boss battle. Mm-hmm. I actually have a problem with boss battles anyway in racing games. I just don't like the idea. I think it's shoehorning a gaming concept which doesn't belong in racing games into the game. I know I might be alone in that view. I think it's a cheap way of doing it. I prefer my racing games to be sports based and sort of have a championship mode and stuff. I just think that it's when you have a game which has abandon issues and you have a game which has AI which is blatantly cheating, boss battles make it even more apparent, because you have to be, as you said, you do have to be superhuman, but also it's because the game has the courses in the game are. You said they were confusing earlier on. They are confusing at times, but also the courses can be quite unforgiving in terms of there are hazards where you are going to go into, and if you make that mistake, you can't beat the boss, and the bosses never make those mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's just it as you said, it detracts from the relatability of the game. It detracts from the fun of the game. But I just think it's another sign that this game is trying to do too much. It's got all these influences from Dirt, from split second type thing, all these influences, they put it all together, but nothing's quite polished enough to make it perfect. And I think if you look at something like Dirt 5, a great example of how to do boss battles in inverted commas relatively well, the showdown events in Dirt 5, they're not forced on you, it's not a big thing, but that's done quite well. I just think Gravel just does it badly, and it's just it makes you. If you have a level on a racing game which irritates you, if it's frustrating because it's unfair, it does ruin the entire game, because you can't progress, you can't make that progress that you've been making, and it doesn't really sit well with the rest of the game, which is a shame. It's
interesting that, because when we decided that we were going to look at this game for this episode, I still had my physical copy from way back when we first got the game when it came out, and I put it into my PS4 and I booted it up, and it was like sort of saying hello again to an old friend that you'd not seen for years. It sort of all came back. It was all kind of started getting familiar again, and then I went into the career mode screen and I saw the bit that I was stuck on way back when. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this now. This is why I stopped playing it. And it's just like, it's so infuriating. I'm stuck at that. I mean, you can play through as many of the other races as you want over and over again, but when you just can't get past that one thing because it cheats so much, it just ruins it. And it's just like, I mean, even after this podcast, I probably won't go back and play Gravel again for a while, just because it's so infuriating.
Which is a shame, isn't it? Because I think it detracts from a legacy a game has. If a game has this obvious flaw in it, and I think that it's a shame that Milestone in particular seem to be a developer which does this quite a lot. I've played through the MXGP games quite a lot, and it's a sort of the reverse in that, where the game becomes ridiculously easy after a while. No matter what settings you put it on, it just becomes impossible to lose. And I just think sometimes they just need to polish their games a little bit more. I'm not a game developer, so that's sort of a very blasé attitude to have. But I mean, just focus more on certain things and get them perfect rather than sort of putting these extra bits in and then not doing them correctly.
Like box ticking exercises kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like they want to rush, and not only them, other developers as well, but it's almost like they want to rush a list of things that the game has rather than sort of get the things they do have on a smaller list perfect. We're in the post-cyberpunk world at the current time, so we all know what happens if games don't do that kind of thing.
Food for thought. Anyway, Mike, let's move on to something that's a little bit more positive, and that is the visual side of things. I generally think that this game looks quite decent, but you can definitely tell it's on last gen. As somebody who now owns a Xbox Series X, I have been slightly spoilt by the 4K loveliness of most of the games that are on that system, well, the ones that take advantage of the extra power. On the PS4, I'm playing on the PS4 Pro, and even there on the PS4 Pro, Gravel has a certain softness to it, like a certain soft fuzziness to it on the PS4. And the cars have a sort of like a weird shimmer around them. I don't know if you've noticed that. What did you play on? Was it Xbox?
Oh, yeah, so I would have had it on if I remember rightly, it was actually one of the first games I had on the Xbox One X.
Okay.
So, I from what I remember, I don't remember a shimmer particularly.
Okay.
When I've watched videos of the Xbox One version, I haven't seen a shimmer, but that just might be due to the poor quality of the upload, to be honest.
Possibly. I mean, it might look better on the Xbox One X. I mean, like I say, I'm playing on the PS4 Pro, and it does, like I say, has a certain sort of softness around it. Also has a bit of an issue with like shadow and level of detail popping on some of the tracks. You can be driving along and you can see a distinct line in the distance where the level of detail suddenly pops from being very low polygon to sort of the model that it wants you to actually see up close, and it's very apparent. And once you notice it, you can't not see it anymore. Same with the shadows. You can see a distinct line in the distance where the shadows just appear, and beyond that line, there is no shadow. And it's once you see it, you can't unsee it. So you're forever looking for it.
Yeah, I think I was going to say I think it's possibly part of the engine the Milestone used for that game, because if I remember rightly, one of the rides, possibly Ride 3 or Ride 2 possibly, and some of the MXGP games from that same time frame had the same problem as well.
Okay.
So I'm guessing they just got one engine for everything, and I think it was a problem with that. The helicopter, if I remember rightly, the helicopter shadow was a real issue for me, in that it didn't ever really seem to work properly. And again, it might be on a pre-patched version, but I remember the helicopter shadow sort of randomly not being where it should be, or becoming very small and very big at random times.
Okay.
Just a random thing I remember.
I do know what you're talking about. I do remember, even just earlier on today when I was playing it, the helicopter shadow was very apparent and very, very large on the ground. So maybe it's something to do with the perspective of the light sourcing. I don't know. Like I say, like you, Mike, I am not a developer, so I might be talking complete and utter toss. I think this is the correct term. But it did look a bit
technical term.
Yeah, technical term. Yeah. Other than that, though, I think the car models are great. I think they look brilliant. Yeah. Some really nice damage effects. Damage is, you can have it as just cosmetic or full damage, which affects like performance of the vehicle as well. But otherwise, I think the game looks nice. As we said earlier, there's a very nice variety on the courses, and the way the kind of colour palette changes depending on the environment is very nice. So the sort of the snowy courses and the icy courses look very blue and cold, whereas the more desert or arid courses have got this kind of very... It's all about the colour temperature, I think, about the palette. Yep. So you get these warm hues on the desert and the more warm courses. And I think overall it looks very nice.
It's a really colourful game. I think it's a really colourful... This is not going to surprise nobody who knows me, but it reminds me of a Sega game. And it's quite a colourful sort of, just an attractive game, really.
Blue skies in gaming, all that kind of stuff.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, some of those tropical island courses just look like they could be from Virtua Racing or something, don't they?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of that. So yeah, it's not perfect, but no game is. But and like as we've just described, it does have its issues with the level of detail and the shadow thing. But it does detract somewhat. But overall, it's quite a nice looking game, quite a nice aesthetic.
Yeah.
Smoke, tussles, and adrenaline. Who knows why you like our checkpoint races so much?
Okay, let's move on to music and sound. Very apparent that there's no co-driver, even in the point-to-point rally stages, which is a bit of a missed opportunity from my perspective. The music is generally quite sort of just like Muzaki rock stuff. Yep. Car music is fine, nothing to write home about. The standout for me, though, is like I said earlier, the voiceover artist who does the introductions to the races. He's very kind of earnest in a sort of cheese-tacular way, but I think it fits the style of the game quite well. And I couldn't find out who the guy was who did the voiceover, but it's good. It reminds me of those rally games from like the mid 2000s where they would do an introduction to the environment, to the course. Welcome to the Rally of Italy.
It always worries me, Tom, when you say you don't know who it was who said the voiceover, because that means that's your next search now. You're gonna find who this person is. You've done this before.
Actually, not
in a weird way.
Let me just look now. I probably didn't look very hard. Let me see. Gravel voiceover.
Gravel voice guy, yeah.
Guy.
That's gonna give you Michael Wincott. 100% guarantee you it's gonna give Michael Wincott because he's got gravelly voice.
Well, the first one is Harvey Forbes Firestein, and I'm guessing that it's not him because he just doesn't. No, it's showing me things about people with gravelly voices, actors with gravelly voices. That's the pitfall of starring in a game called Gravel. Yeah. You're never going to get found through. Through.
I mean, I like. We have to touch on this. I think very quickly is the fact that the game is called Gravel. I mean, it's almost like they've gone. So there's a really popular game called Dirt. What's like dirt, and we can call it mud? No, not mud.
Mud's been done. There is a mud game.
That's been done. Yeah, that's been done. Can we do it? Can we call it? I don't know. Oh, gravel. It's like it just to me it just feels like they've just gone. Yeah, gravel. I like the game, but everything about it just feels a little bit like they've gone. Let's try and copy Dirt and change things a little bit, which is a little bit of a. I suppose that's why the game wasn't as popular when it came out as it maybe should have been. It did come across a little bit generic in many of its ways.
I would go a bit further than that, Mark. I would hazard a guess. I would put money on the fact that they called it gravel because dirt was a thing.
Oh yeah, 100%.
What else could they call it? Sediment? I don't know. Aggregates.
We should do an entire podcast one day of just literally names of games that are just really generic. I mean, Dirt as well. I mean, just like Race Pro. I mean, just it annoys me in some way that the games are so generic in their titles.
Isn't there one called iRacing?
Yeah, exactly. Multi-million pound budgets, and they can't invest any more than just calling the game Gravel. I mean, come on.
Generic Computer Racer 2005. Well, I suppose on that basis, you could say that Sega Rally sounds proper basic, yeah.
Yeah, but that's Sega. I mean, let's not mess with perfection.
If Nintendo came out with Nintendo Rally, do you think Sega would have had a lawsuit waiting? Do you reckon they could have mounted some kind of challenge to that?
I think so. I think Sega are known for doing spurious legal cases sometimes, aren't they?
I don't know what you're talking about. I can possibly comment. Right, let's get on to our final verdicts then, Mike. We've waxed long and hard about this game. That's not something I thought I'd say on this podcast. But
no, it's not saying, mate, isn't it? Waxed long and hard. It's. I mean, I'm not entirely sure that's what our listeners have come here for. But
I've got a review here from a professional reviewer. His name is Sam Brook. Or it could be her name. I didn't look at the image. I just saw the name of the person. From the PlayStation fan super site, Push Square. And this is what they say. Milestone's latest is a fun romp through a variety of off-road locations, offering both quantity and variety in terms of tracks, cars, and modes. It's not the most ambitious racer ever, but non-series style of the flagship Off-Road Masters mode will be very appealing to those wanting an enjoyable arcade experience. And the final score is 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
That's quite a clear and concise summary of the game. Mike, I'm going to come to you for yours, please.
Yeah, I think I agree with much of that review, really. It's a perfectly enjoyable, perfectly reasonable off-road arcade racing game. It is incredibly generic in every respect, but that is not a bad thing necessarily if it's done well. And I think it just about does it well enough to be recommendable even today. I will give it a score as well. Are we doing?
Yeah, go and give it a score. Go on.
Give it
an arbitrary score. Go on.
Yeah. I'm going to give it a score of 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10 from Mike. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Likewise, I agree with some of what is in that review summary. I like the fact that there's a lot of variety in terms of vehicles and tracks and race types as well. I think the career mode format is interesting, and the vehicle handling for the most part is fine. And there's some good close races in there as well. Oh, and the weekly challenges thing that I mentioned earlier is still going 3 years later, which is, hats off to Milestone for keeping those going, because some of them are quite fun. Cons, though, I think the terrible cheating AI is a massive black mark for me. The audio is quite uninspiring for the most part. The rubber banding and the cheating boss battles, again, I can't say that enough for those people. Maybe you listen to this podcast who haven't played this game. Go into this game knowing that you will be infuriated and you'll be fine. So for that reason, I'm going to give Gravel a slap bang average 5 out of 10 because it does some things very well, but other things it does very badly. Okay, that brings us to the end of our first episode of 2021. Mike, thank you very much for joining me, talking about Gravel with your gravelly tones.
Pleasure as always. Pleasure as always to talk about these obscure games that we like and some people do as well, which is always good.
Yeah. I, in fact, picked up another rally game, which is not really, I don't know if it would be classed as obscure, but it's Tommy Mackinnon Rally on the PlayStation. And I think I will be looking at that in the near future on one of our bonus stage episodes. Sure. I just need to find my PlayStation AV cable because it's gone walkabout somehow. So as soon as I get that, I will be doing a bonus stage looking at that particular entry in the old Rally Championship family, because it was part of the Rally Championship series, wasn't it? Just renamed for the
it was the next one.
For the PAL.
Never played it. I think it's one of the few rally games I don't think I've ever played. So that's interesting.
Yeah, cool. Right. Where can people find us on the internet? Well, I'm glad you asked, Tom. You can find us at www.powerdriftingpodcast.com, or you can find us on Twitter at powerdriftpod. Please give us a like or a review or whatever you like to do on the old podcatchers of choice. If you can give us a review, that would be very much appreciated. You can also find all of our episodes on YouTube. Just type Power Drifting Podcast and you'll find us. I think we've got 3 subscribers now, Mike, so we're doing quite well.
Yay!
We're doing well. I just want to say thank you as well to everybody who's been downloading our podcast since we began this endeavour last February. I know we've not been very prolific, so thank you very much to those people who like listening to us waffle about this very niche topic. Mike, you can also be found on Twitter, I believe.
Yep, I can be found at @space_turnip, where I talk about Dreamcast quite a lot, actually, which is unsurprising.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, well, we won't linger much longer. I just want to say again, thank you, Mike. Thank you to you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Power Drifting. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Finish! That wasn't too bad.
Right, turn that. Right, phone's off, so if you can hear me, it's working.
I can hear you loud and clear, Michael. I've called you Michael twice now. I'm not sure why I've done that.
I get told out when I'm told off, so I'm used to it. How are you, Thomas?
Yes, I'm okay.